Hi there. I did a quick video yesterday on how to get Spring Boot to work with LDAP or Active Directory, because there's not much difference between the two. And I did the video, and at the time I was authenticating using CN, and CN with the LDAP directory that I had in place had a long name for the CN, which wasn't the proper way of authenticating. I remember in the past that we were filtering and using internal components such as UID in this instance that I needed for it to work. So I then got it to work after the video, so I've decided to redo the video, but I'm going to try and make it quick. So first thing I did was to have a look at what's out there at the moment, and according to the guides of, so first of all, we've created a Spring Boot application, and these are the dependencies, web security, and the name of it, Spring Boot Active Directory. Then I've added the following dependencies to the pom.xml. So here we've got this lot here, and then I've gone to obviously the guide, which suggested to use the web Spring, what's it called? Web Security Configurer Adapter. So I used that and it was working, and it gives you a dummy LDAP database, which that unbound ID basically uses this file that you put into the server, and it becomes a dummy LDAP server. So in here we had the user Bob, and Bob's password, and that's how I was authenticating. Here it is, Bob's password. So as per instructions, we put the test server.ldif into directory. We configured application.yml in this instance to have the Spring LDAP embedded base DN, the LDIF file, which is this file here, and the port. And then we've got a configuration file for security configuration, which uses the web security configurer adapter, but as you can see, it's deprecated now. So this is why it became known as using the old way, or it printing this out. And I didn't really do too much work beyond this on there, because obviously the technology is now deprecated. And I've got the project here, which will be on the video. There's two branches, and there's a deprecated branch, which is what we're looking at the moment. So it's exactly that. So I've started it up now, and if we go to it, if I try and sign in as random user, it will say bad credential, but if we try and log in as Bob and Bob's password, we get logged in. So that was the old way, and then I looked at the deprecated method of this and what it's changed to and how to change it. So I stopped working on this project, and on the GitHub project, there's the main project of this project, this application, which has had a lot more work done on it. So I'm going to put this behind, and we're going to go to the other branch. And in this branch, the main branch, the pom.xml is slightly different. We're not using the unbound ID, because I hit, so if we go to security configuration, it's very different. And I hit a lot of problems trying to use that internal file. So I gave up, and I thought, well, it isn't the real life scenario of what I need it for. So, and I'm spending a lot of time trying to get this thing to work, which isn't going to be a real life scenario. So let me just try and make it into a real life scenario. So I followed some guides online, or looked up Docker LDAP images, and I came across this project here. And this project basically is using Futurama as the LDAP server, and it's got so Planet Express is its DC configurations, and in there like the admin username credentials is that, and the password is that, and then it's got various people like Professor Fry, Zoidberg, Hermes, Bender, obviously. So I thought, okay, well, this will be quite fun to get to work as such within this project. So I followed the instructions, which was to pull the image and to start it. So in our case, we're gonna just start it up. And there's our Docker image of this LDAP server running, and it runs on port 10389. So beyond that, what happened was in security configuration, the previous older project had something similar, but this is the neat way. So I've got it to have some paths that are authenticated and some that permit all. The authenticator is a new way of doing it. And what we had to do is previously, in the previous video, we had new string UID and the UID, CN. CN, that's what it would be. And CN would be their full name as per thing. So CN would have been Amy Wong to log in. And some of them are, obviously, this is really quite a long name to be putting in, to be logging on with. And some of them have got funny characters. So it wasn't a perfect way of getting it to log on. So using filter-based LDAP user search, I was able to filter for the UID and log in via that. This segment, granted authority, is at the time, obviously when I authenticate with this internal database, this doesn't have any roles. The users on this LDAP server don't have any roles. So when it authenticated, I wasn't getting any roles assigned to it, any Spring Security roles assigned to it. So I wanted a way of manipulating that information. And it may be that the LDAP server has some form of role or something in there that suggests that this person should have this role. And it was a way of how do I get the Spring Security now to override what's been given to it. So in here, the granted authorities, this was a way of setting the default authority. I don't think you would actually need to use this methodology, but it does assign this additional role to the user. And it might be a switch or something that you can use to add a default role if you need to. But the main thing that does the role changes is, so typically it's this authentication provider, and by default or in the documentation, you would do this new person context mapper. But I've used a custom user details mapper, which is my own class in here. And as you can see here, I've added role admin, role librarian, role super user to a custom user, which is also a class that we've got here. So when it authenticates, it assigns this class to the authenticated user, which by default then gets all these roles. Now you could have perhaps switches that you pass into here based on what comes back from LDAP. Yeah, I mean, that's out for question. And this is where this role default authority gets assigned. So these were all additional hacks that I put in, and by default, if you don't do any of that, you would get authenticated and you would have the roles that LDAP would provide you with, which in this case is nothing. So I'm going to set it back to my hacked method. This relates to binding the LDAP user with database. I kind of gave it a go, but I'm not sure if it's what I wanted to do. So I think it was more around this is what I was trying to get to here. So I've left it as that, and it makes it a lot simpler. And obviously that covers the 2 new classes that have been added to the project. There's the home controller, which in here we've got logs, which is not authenticated. As you can see here, we've got a rule to say logs is permitted, but admin, which doesn't even exist, and / whatever, / nothing is authenticated, but / logs, you can just go in. So that's our controller, and our controller's got authentication as a input as such, but it's getting that from the framework itself or from Spring Boot, and principal, which is a Spring Security user. So here it displays on the screen some of the roles and the user, which is what we've overridden with the roles, and it also gives on the screen the authentication information. This will then break, because I put some tests in place, but because I've added this authentication to the screen output, this breaks it in tests, and if you were to comment that out, then all the tests would pass. But at the moment, this makes it better to understand what's going on. And any other changes here, application properties not used, application YML, and in our case, I've configured LDAP to use this LDAP server, which it could be Active Directory. Username on a Windows Active Directory, the username in this case might be, because I know I've got another Active Directory example from Apache Shiro from years ago, and the username was something like this. But in our case, it's a string and it's the username like this. So that's the password for it as per instructions of this lovely open LDAP image. And obviously the thing that I want to raise a concern or an issue to ask for what's his name? Hedonism bots. Right, because it's missing, right? And he's the best character of all, I would have thought. And basically, because it's all done, this is actually me, right? At the moment. Perfect. Anyhow, and there are tests here. So some of the tests I was trying to do, but it redirects, so I couldn't get it to do a basic HTTP header test. So this is wrong. But it does work with logs, and we know it does a redirect to go to login, so that works as well. Bind authenticator test. This is I was just basically playing around. This all should work. So if I run this test, so run control test. So there you go, they passed. Run these tests. So they've all passed. I mean, I found this online, and I think it's the official guide, but I couldn't get the thing to work locally. So I ended up working out how to make it work, and it literally tests a bad credential, a good credential with the wrong password, authenticate with user search. So this is where it authenticates using the username Fry, whereas over here you can see principal is Hubert J. Farnsworth, which is a professor, a non-existent user. And then LDAP demo, this is like a dummy LDAP demo application, which literally from scratch creates the whole thing to connect to LDAP. This is what you would typically do to connect LDAP manually, and it also does a filter for fry over here. And after it's done a filter, it looks for various attribute IDs, such as the given name description and all the rest of it, which you can see here. Yeah, their email address and everything. So that's all coming back from here, which comes back when you do the filter based on the filtering that you're doing. And then this one is LDAP template, which is the official way of doing it, and I can get it to authenticate. Let's run this one. This was a touch and go on this one. But the test that I did, yeah, they passed. And I think some of it is more about stuff that got printed out. So it was like these bindings. That's the test. So we're going to start the site up, and I'm going to show you what's going on with it. So over here, we've got our LDAP server running. Let's call it Active Directory if you like. Over here, I did not start that. Oh, sorry. Let's just run the test. Okay. If we try and sign in, if we minimize this and try and log in with random user, you can see here, let's try to expecting to see AA or whatever. Anyhow, Fry's logged in now. So it's done. Probably to do with the filtering that it does, the way it works. Oh, there we go. UID Fry, UID AA. That's what I was looking for. And the authentication details that I was talking about is all here, and these are the roles that I was talking about. Now, the only thing that I found quite strange about it when I was looking at it earlier myself was that there are two granted authorities. The first one doesn't have that default authority that I was talking about in the class, but the second one does have the default authority. Now, I was also looking at what gets printed out through the controller, which is basically where it does this role based on what the security Spring Security thinks the authentication roles are, and yeah, it's there. They're all there. So yeah, it works, and that's the video in total. So thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye bye.